So I'm Simon Keats. I am the designer and the owner of Origin Effects. I just want to talk to you about our new drive pedal. It's been 2 years in the making. It's been a lot of hard work. We're hoping that it's going to go down really well and that everyone is going to love it. But yeah, the inspiration behind it was kind of all of my favourite sort of guitar sounds are things off records that I kind of grew up with, I guess, and so that the sound of the guitar for me is ingrained in the sounds, the tones heard on those records. So yeah, drive's a funny one. I don't tend to use many overdrive pedals because to me they just don't really live up to the sound that I've got in my head, you know, the kind of reference of these great players from the 60s and the 70s, you know, that just plugged into non-master volume amps and just cranked them up. And you know, the circuitry inside created the sound and in the process kind of defined the sound of rock and roll and defined the sound of rock music. Yeah, I mean, I was brought up on the Allman Brothers, so they used things like, well, they used blackface Fenders, they used Marshalls. So I mean, I just wanted to buy lots of these things and chase those tones. And it was just something that I just had to do. I had to just get it out of my system, and I gigged with them, and it was inconvenient, and people complained that it was too loud, but it's just kind of what we did. We were a loud band, and that's how we wanted to sound. But it did kind of inspire this pedal here, which recreates all of the circuitry inside these amps, and beyond that it recreates like a power station, because part of the amp is the way it interacts with the power supply and the way the power supply kind of interacts with the mains. So it's important to understand the whole chain and the whole kind of story behind the sound. So not only does this have circuitry that replicates the valve stages like other pedals claim to do, it replicates the mains. It generates a synthetics main signal. It rectifies it. It recreates the power supply from an amp. It even replicates, it even changes the like the attributes or the parameters of that power supply so that it can perform like a 50s amp, a 60s amp, or a 70s amp, and that's the ghost control, and that can create lots of ghost effects, which are like second sort of notes, sort of almost like subharmonics that are formed around the note you're playing. Again, they can be heard on vintage, on like records from the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a first for the pedal world, and it's called RevivalDRIVE, which is named after an Allman Brothers song, which is obviously sort of my inspiration for creating the pedal. And hopefully it'll just kind of recapture some of those classic guitar tones, and all of the kind of just an unabridged, it says unabridged amp tone, and that's what we wanted to do. We wanted an overdrive pedal that created the complete tone of an amp, not just the kind of like the distortion and the sustain or whatever. We want all of the kind of the kind of subtleties, like the crossover distortion that an amplifier has that gives you a bit of fizz as the note decays. We wanted to capture that. We wanted those double tones, those ghost notes. We wanted to capture that. We wanted to capture like the threshold when you play on a valve amp. It's really like sensitive to dynamics, and we've done that with the this more presence control. We'll explain more about that later. Everything's in there, and hoping this video will kind of explain a bit more about it and a bit more about how the features work, and so that you'll understand the pedal, because there's a lot to get your head around. So yeah, there you go. Good luck.